Hello and welcome to M&A Murders and Accusations, the good, the bad, and the ugly of selling your business. We dig into what you need to know and how not to kill the sale of your business. Now here's our host, Rick J. Krebs, Mergers and Acquisitions Advisor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to M&A Murders and Accusations, the good, the bad, and the ugly of selling a business. I'm really excited about our guest today, David Gowens and Garrick Reevs. I've been working with these guys. I don't know, how long has it been, guys? 5 years, 10 years? It goes fast.
Creeping toward the decade mark, yes.
Wow, it goes so fast. But I'm sure pleased to have you on the show today, and I appreciate your time. They have coined the phrase business puberty. And when I think about puberty, it just goes back to, bad memories of pimples and braces and proms and awkward moments, as we're growing up. But I love that phrase, by the way, guys. I love what that means, and we're going to get into it more. But anyway, the show today is called Business Puberty, and I want to share a story. A story that I talk to when I have people that are looking to sell a business. I always ask them this question. I'm like, how much gas is in your tank? Are you blinking on empty, or do you have enough gas for a few more years? Where are you at? Where is your energy level? And a lot of these businesses that I bring in, and they're looking to sell, they're clearly not ready. And I was just talking to one today in Florida, and the guy's got a construction company. We valued it. It's a couple $1 million. And I went back and I stole your phrase and used it, but I gave you credit. I said, do it. So like, guys, your business is in business puberty. We've got to get you out of the pimples and the proms and get you ready for real life. And he's like, well, what does that mean? Like, you know what? You can sell today for $2 million, but if you spend a little time and a little effort, I can sell you for $6 or $7 million. Just invest a few more years into your business, into your baby. And anyway, he was really excited about that. And I was excited because he was excited. And I'm like, that's going to be much better exit. But anyway, before we get into it, give us a little bit of background on each of you. That I know you, but the listeners don't know. So please give a little background about yourself and how you got into the business of advising clients through their exit.
So David and I actually met quite a few years ago. We've been working together for quite some time. And where our kind of pedigree comes from is a family office type of experience in finance. And it's having a comprehensive look at all different areas of finance and diving into not only the personal, but the business side of things. And so that's kind of where we came into a lot of identifying what businesses are doing really, really well, where they're missing, where there's opportunity, where there's things that just we don't even know about that make a huge impact, not only throughout the day-to-day of the business, but also throughout the lifetime of the business and the exit of the business and how that all kind of comes together. So we have been working in the financial industry in a strategic role in helping people kind of identify some of these things for quite some time.
And for those of you listeners who may be, if you're in the financial realm, you've probably heard of the term family office before. For those of you who are not in the financial realm, you maybe don't know exactly what that term is. So think of it in this way. Having a virtual family office or coming from that background, it really is the pinnacle. It's the place where entrepreneurs ultimately strive to say, I know I've arrived when I can work with a team who works comprehensively and all the aspects of my finances are working in harmony with one another. Yep. It's moving from, think of it in this term, it's moving from having experts to having an ecosystem. It's working from thinking of finance to thinking of your freedom as an entrepreneur. It's working from thinking of, I am an operator in my business to I want to become an owner in my business. So this is kind of some of the words I would use this is the language of freedom. When you start to operate with a family office at that caliber, it allows you to sit in the role that you enjoy best and where you can make the greatest impact and provide value. So better part of a decade is what we've been doing that. And thanks to a lot of friends in industry, we just haven't been able to quit it and have just added more value since then. So
love it. And love what you guys do. And we're going to share your contact information here at the end of the podcast. But anyone that's looking, has a business that's in business puberty, that's looking to take it to maturity, I recommend Garrick and Dave. These guys are really good at what they do and really good at digging into the details. Many of the things, like you said, Dave, you don't even know what they are till you get inside, right? And you really look at the mechanics and the operations of a business. And I love what you said when you talked about being an owner versus being an operator. So many times these business owners are just being operators, not really stepping out and looking at their business as a true owner. And the new owners do that. Private equity come in and do that, right? And so why not have the business owner do that in preparation of an exit? So yeah, great wisdom. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about this. Let's talk about business puberty and how that came about.
So we were actually at a meeting and we were throwing around a bunch of ideas. We even took some time because we were just throwing out some different ideas of how we can better portray what we talk about, what we do, how we help, and how we serve individuals. And I remember it pretty vividly because we decided to take a break, and it was like a working break. We went out, we broke off into pairs and started walking around, outside, just walking and trying to figure out, okay, like just throwing anything at the table. David likes to talk about the Disney term. Yeah, the Disney effect of we can put anything on the table, but anything that can be taken off of the table as well. Mm-hmm. And so we started just like thinking about some different concepts and how to better portray and how to better have individuals kind of connect with that concept of business puberty. And that's where it came around. Because I was like, man, it's such an awkward phase. It's such a weird, like you're in business, you're doing well, but you're not at the point where you're like, I've made it in my business. You're in this weird phase where we're not at the big stage where we want to be, but we're not at the startup phase either.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about this. And then this funny term, business puberty, I was like, man, it's kind of like we're going through puberty, business puberty, if you will, that we're in this awkward phase where we kind of know where we want to be, but we're not there yet. There's pains and things that we're going through in our business, things that we didn't expect are coming up. We've got this kind of awkwardness because we don't know where we sit and where we lie. That's where the term business puberty came up. And David, you can elaborate on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think what's unique about this term, and we all gravitated to it very quickly the moment Garrick mentioned it, and then started playing with the term back and forth. It's similar and unlike puberty in the form that we've all gone through. So where it's similar is that it's the awkward phase. Where it's different is that you grow out of that awkward phase naturally when you go through it as a maturing adult. You do not grow out of business puberty in a business.
Not natural.
It's not natural. It's something that you have to take concerted effort to. You have to measure. You have to see what's going on. So you can be in business for 6 months, or you could be in business for 2 years or 20 years and still remain in business puberty. And so this was a really fun experience for us to be able to find a term that all of us can relate to, having all experienced our junior high years.
I love it. I wouldn't want to go back and relive it.
No. Yeah. None of us are impressed with our junior high years, and neither our parents or teachers.
So when I think about this, I think about it, just a little 15-year-old kid with braces and pimples and glasses and all this awkwardness, trying to go out and get a date with the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, for instance.
Yeah. It's funny because it's that having the most optimal full potential, but not be performed at the highest caliber. We often will use the term that are you in a place where you realize that you're offering best-in-class service and products, but getting industry average results? That is a perfect understanding. It's a simple way of saying, am I in business puberty right now? Because when you know that you're maybe top of class, but you're not getting to the top of class results, you can easily say, okay, yeah, I am that guy chasing down the Dallas cheerleader, or I'm that guy who's trying to get on the football team. And by the way, guys, any listeners out there, we're not promoting that that's the only way to be successful is be a cheerleader or a football player. If you knew us, none of us nerds would actually probably, none of us have ever been on a football team. So I don't know that's why our reference is. But yeah, it's definitely that feeling of knowing your full potential, but not quite understanding how to get there.
Exactly.
And if the guy were to go and ask for a date from the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, I think about what happens, right? And the cheerleader just pats him on the head and just kind of makes him go away or whatever, and he keeps trying. And
that's cute.
He's cute, right?
Yep,
not a suitable suitor right now.
Yeah.
And I think about people going to market that way, right? And these guys, I mean, we're the cat and the mouse sitting down to tea and crumpets, and the sellers are the mouse, right? These buyers, many of them are sophisticated. They've been around the block. They know what they're doing, and
know what they're looking for.
Yeah. And the trick is to not get eaten by the cat. The trick is to get down to tea and crumpets, right? And play all nice and talk to the cat, but to not get eaten by the cat. And when you go out into the market and you're in business puberty phase versus maturity phase, you're highly likely you're going to get eaten by that cat.
Well, and one thing I want to add to this, Rick, think of it in this way. Whether we're just speaking of human beings or we're speaking of entrepreneurs and business owners, we are often in fear of or scared of both what we know and what we don't know. The difference of being able to navigate that is knowing what to do. And so when you realize if the first step is to increase my awareness and understand what I need to measure, then it allows you to say, I can navigate and I can design a plan around it. Then when you're like, I'm scared of what I know and I don't know, but I have a plan and I'm aware of where those pitfalls may be proactively, they're not going to blindside me. Maybe you can't account for everything. But remember, guys, there are 32 million business owners in the United States right now. That's about 9% of the US population. We're not the first people who have gone through these steps and stages. There are plenty of examples to learn from. The difference is, are we connected with the resources that can communicate to us what those are? Not just the areas of avoidance, but areas of opportunity.
Absolutely. And the right people. You know, as we talk about this notion of exit planning, we talk about assembling a team and assembling a winning team of people around them. You know, they absolutely have to have the right people who are experienced, who've done this before, and can lead them down this path and lead them to maturity, right? And then I think of the same 15-year-old guy who later on is 25 years old and big and buff, and the football player going over and the cheerleaders asking him for a date instead, right? It's a different.
Exactly. I'm still going to laugh at this football analogy, Rick, because if any of the viewers could see who we are, none of us look like a football player or cheerleader. We've just found ourselves, and this is an analogy we can all relate to, though, right? We can all relate to it. Probably we were the guy who was geeking out on some sort of problem-solving solution, but it is an analogy that we can totally relate to. We've all been witness to. So, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So your position of power switches. So when you're going to the cheerleader, the 15-year-old the guy in puberty is begging for a date, but when he's matured, when he's 25, the cheerleader's begging for a date from him. So it switches and he becomes much more attractive. And that's the way these businesses are after they work with smart guys like you, getting them ready where they need to be. Then the buyers are clamoring. Then we're looking at multiple offers, then we're looking at the highest price point, is setting the high mark versus, begging for a date and begging for some attention from them. I love it.
I was just going to say, I love that analogy, especially because it's like the individual who's gone through puberty and is now mature on the other side, they know what they have. They know what is available to them, right? And so they can now decipher and decide, yeah, I'll take that date or not, right? and they know better, right? When we're the individual going through puberty and coming into that situation, we're shooting for the stars, and it's hard because we don't even know what we actually have, and we can't speak to it either, and so it's a little bit harder from that perspective.
What was one of the terms? I can't remember whose term this is. If you guys can think of whose quote this is, please fill in the blank. But we often overestimate what we're capable of and what we could do inside of a year, and underestimate what we could do in 10. And I believe a handful of people have said it. I think, what's his name? I always call him Big Hands McGee.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. Yeah. So I think he was one of the people to at least make the term popular, if it's not his term alone. But it really is just that. It's saying, I need to meet my potential halfway. I need to meet my attractiveness halfway. I need to meet what all the things I've been blessed with. You guys as business owners out there, you've been blessed with something. You're unique at something. You're creating value in some way. Lean into that. But the way you meet it halfway is by saying, I'm going to take the time to do the things that I'm not going to allow to surprise me on the back end of this relationship with my business. So anyway.
Yeah, one of the things to kind of add to that is we talk about this attractiveness, right? The football player is probably more attractive than the individual going through puberty and has pimples and those kinds of things. But at the same time, there's two sides to that. There's that attractiveness, and somebody can be attractive, a business can be attractive, but then you get to know them and maybe they're not attractive from that perspective, right? So there's both of those sides to say, okay, yeah, they look attractive from the outside. You go on a first date with them, and then you find out
they have a terrible personality.
I have a terrible personality. I cannot mess here. This is not going to work.
Yeah.
And so there's even a level deeper than that attractiveness, and businesses have that exact same thing. They have the outside attractiveness, and when we're going through business puberty, it's harder to see that. But then there's the underlying attractiveness as well, or the readiness, like we talk about, is are they actually a good fit? And that's the other part that we'll
dig deeper into that as we get through questions. But I'm glad you introduced that, because this is more than just about the looks and the physical discomfort or the emotional discomfort that puberty brings. There's a layer deeper to Garrick's point, which we're excited to dive into today.
Yeah. Compatibility. You can be that's one thing, but a compatibility element to it. And just like the dating analogy, right? I tell people selling a business is just like dating. You go on a first date. If you like them, you go on a second date, and you start to develop that relationship. And the business of selling a business is more like a marriage than it is a divorce. And like when we do these sales, oftentimes the sellers have to carry a note or an earnout. And so they have to work with these people for several years. And if they go into the transaction thinking it's like a divorce where they're fighting for every inch of geography they can get, it's not going to be a very good outcome. Same way with marriage. You go in there fighting and beating up your wife so bad before marriage, she's not going to want to get married to you. And if she does, she's going to hold a grudge, or we're going to hold a grudge later on.
Operate in abundance, right? Operate in abundance.
Exactly.
And there's enough economics for everybody when especially if you've done the work ahead of time. We become covetous when we, again, fear what we know and what we don't know. But if we have a plan, there's nothing to fear, except, I'm not going to say fear itself because that would be tacky, but go ahead, Rick. Fire up.
So here's my question. We've talked about it. We've defined it. How do we know when a business is ready to sell?
Great question. I think there's a couple ways of looking at this. So one, kind of the seat we sit in, I think is a good place to start with when a business is ready to sell is, have you measured what matters? Again, popular term we're all familiar with, but you have to begin with knowing what matters. Sometimes as an owner, we know what matters to us, but we need to know what matters to the person buying. And so we can find that a business will become very attractive, to Reevs' earlier point, which is it is appealing in all of its external qualities, right? But is it appealing in all of its internal qualities? And so what I would draw this back down to is looking at, am I measuring the tangible and the intangible? Extremely important question to ask. So then the question might be posed as, well, what is tangible? Tangible might be your EBITDA, your profits, and your assets. which will come to a certain value for that business. And then it'd come to a certain number. Okay, let's assume that number is $1 million. Well, now we would look at what is the intangible though? Processes, systems, tools, resources, all these different things. How is my client, how are my clients spread across our revenue? Like, is it heavy weighted toward one or two clients, or is it weighted across, a wide array and over a long period of time of opportunity? So when you start to measure all of the tangible and intangible, now you compare those and say, I'm not just going into this relationship measuring only my physical attractiveness and my tangible attractiveness. I'm actually measuring my intangible. And this is important for this reason. Most owners don't realize that your tangible attractiveness only weighs into 25% approximately across the board. If you look at the national rating here, 25% of what the value is of your business. 75% of your business weighs on the intangible. And so it's extremely and immensely valuable to understand, am I using a nationally recognized process to measure both the tangible and intangible value of my business? And that will increase that. Now you can start to look at what range of value is available to my industry. And this goes into what your skill set is, Rick. But where do I fall within that range? Because I can't impact the market by saying I'm going to choose what market I'm in. No, you are chosen by what you do in business, but you can choose where you fall into that market of value, whether that is average or best in class. So your opportunity is going to be between where the lowest range is, mid-range, and high range. Now you can start to play with, okay, what intangible and tangible actions can I put at play to increase my value and get a greater return out of my business? So when the question, if it's, how do I know I'm ready? Have you done an impact assessment? At least that's what we like to measure. We call it an impact assessment. So have I done an impact assessment? Have I measured my tangible and intangible across the board? And if I've done that, then I can at least stay in a place of always being ready to sell, even if I never choose to sell, which is the best place to be in.
One thing to add to that is that when he talks about measuring what matters, we're really good oftentimes as business owners and as individuals at measuring the things that we already are doing, right? Measuring the EBITDA, measuring the profitability, measuring the revenue. We're used to measuring some of these things. The intangible is a lot harder to measure, and so we just don't. And that's one of the biggest mistakes is we just don't look at some of those factors of like what David was saying. The structure, the systems, the processes, the people, all of these other things. And it's really hard to measure those.
Very hard to quantify the metrics, the intangible metrics of the business.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And so we oftentimes push them under the rug or say, well, we'll look at that later. But then when it comes time and those need to be measured, when we're ready to sell, we think we're ready to sell as business owners. We haven't measured those things. So we don't know where they sit. We don't know where they stand.
You don't have a leg to stand on now when a buyer is looking at your business and they're saying, listen, this looked really good, but now they're devaluing you left and right in your business valuation. And the data's starting to go sour because they're realizing that you don't have a personality in your business, not literal personality, but seeing that it is all a show, right? Revenue looks good, profit looks good, but you are a glorified employee of your business, not attractive anymore.
So I see the person, back to our analogy, they're in business puberty with the pimples and with the glasses and braces, and they go up to the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. They think they're the football player.
Yep. Right?
And they're not. And so that's a great point that you bring up, that if you want to know, you need to ask someone. You need to ask an outside person. And so I'll give an example of this. The other day, I'm terrible at picking colors for my clothes. Like I always have to ask my wife. I'll put on a jacket, I'm like, hey, does this shirt match? I know that I'm not good at it. And so, I'd say 98% of the time I come out with my outfit and she's like, Rick, that doesn't even begin to match. That's not even right? The shoes, the pants.
You're an artist, Rick. You're an artist. Just call yourself an artist.
There's a series we've been watching, Better Call Saul, about this attorney, and he has these ugly suits. You have to see the episode to understand it. But in fact, he dresses so that they will fire him. He dresses so bad so they'll fire him. And my wife tells me, hey, Saul is your man. He's your dressing mentor, Rick. That's how you dress. I'm like, oh, man. No. And so I realize that I have to ask outside people. And I think this notion of the need, the business owners don't know what they don't know. And so hiring outside consultants and people like yourself to look under the hood, to look at these metrics, which they're, I want to say, afraid to quantify, but maybe afraid or unable to quantify, and really look at this business and, and tell them, hey, those pants don't go with that shirt, before they try and go out and get a date with the cheerleader.
I want to pivot this in another maybe light too. Think of it in this way. The jock, and I'm going to play into the analogy a little bit, and let's say the jock and the nerd. We're nerds, so we can use the term. But they both have something very special to offer.
Yeah.
This is the difference, though. If I'm the nerd trying to play jock, now I'm not playing in I don't know where my range of value is. I'm trying to be attractive in a place that I don't have those things to offer, right? Maybe I think that the jock is really cool, so I'm going to try and show up like a jock. Well, that's not going to sell. So the goal is not to become to be a nerd who wants to be a jock. That's not the goal. To Garrick's point about going deeper, it's owning who you are. It's understanding what value you have to offer. So now let's just play in this analogy for a moment. Maybe the person who they're going after, whether it be a cheerleader or a best friend, or it doesn't matter who they are, someone in home ec class, the reality is what if they do like athleticism? Sure, that's great. That's the jock. But what if this person that they're talking to, that they're attracted to, actually needed help with an area where this nerd geeks out on and is phenomenally talented? So now it has nothing to do with the appearance of anything, because it's drawn down to this is where this person's readiness and quality and value sits. Mm-hmm. And now we're playing in the field that they are best equipped to play in. And they have a different thing to offer. And that thing to offer is who they are. And now all we need to do is bring out the best in class of that. So when I think of the business owners in this place, it's embrace who you are. To your point, Rick, of finding experts. This is the thing. You can do it all, but you can't do it all at once. You may be best at what you do in your business when you think of all the employees you've ever hired over time. But if that's what you're going to do, you're going to become a glorified operator and employee. You have to think of, what is freedom to me? Mm-hmm. What does creating value and impact mean to me? That's what matters most. Then you can sit in the role that you were meant to or that you desire most, and the business can operate by bringing in the proper experts to fill the roles that you don't want to fill or don't understand need to be filled.
Yep. And the business grows into maturity. Right?
Yeah.
And then when you go out, you're more attractive to people, either within your space. And what I see in the market is when you become more attractive, it's a different deal. You go out with confidence. For instance, we just had a transaction we were working on and we had one letter of intent. Well, boom, we get a second letter of intent or third letter of intent. And my seller's posture, their attitude, everything changes. They're like, oh, wow, yes. Someone wants us, You got an outside person telling them they're attractive, telling them, hey, that shirt matches well with those pants. And then, it's like, oh, really?
We have further validation with other people saying that. It's like, no, actually what you got is attractive.
Yes.
Yeah. And that actually builds that confidence.
Exactly. And that makes my job a lot easier because the buyers see and feel that confidence, and then we're pushing the prices upward versus begging them for a date and begging them to come and look at us.
Yes,
entirely changes it. So tell us a little bit about a couple of success stories on recent cases that you've been working on.
Yeah, so I'll share one. This is a good friend and an individual that I've worked with for quite some time. We're going to call him Judd. But Judd, he had multiple businesses that he was looking to sell. And this plays into this perfectly. Multiple businesses that he wanted to sell, they were doing well, right? Really well, e-commerce. And he had, and his spouse spoke, and we're like, okay, what do we want out of this? What are we looking to get out of this? And they came up with a number, 20 million. And I was like, okay, where did this number come from? Did it come from like, just that's what we want? Or did it come from numbers? Like where did this number come from? And he was like, no, that's just what me and my wife talked about. I was like, okay, cool. So let's go out and actually see what's like the attractiveness. How ready are we to sell? What does it look like in the markets? These kinds of things. And when we did, private equity started coming to the table and saying, oh, okay, yeah, you do have something that looks pretty attractive, because he kind of knew what he had and knew what he wanted. And they were coming to the table and saying, oh, 14 million, maybe 17 million. And it was like, okay, well, let's dive a little bit deeper and see, is this actually what it's worth? Can we get 20 million? Like, what does that look like? So we started to dive into what do we actually have? What is here? Because there is some attractiveness. People are interested, right? We've got some interest that's kind of floating around. But when we pop up the hood, there
wasn't an engine in there.
Yeah. Is there what kind of engine do we have? Is it a Toyota with a Ferrari engine underneath? Or what does this look like? And so we started to dive into that a little bit deeper and started to go into what David was talking about, measuring what matters. So we started measuring what matters within this. And if we wanted to sell both of these at the same time and roll them up, well, after all was said and done, after we measured and actually knew what we had, we were able to quantify and qualify exactly what was there and the industry that we were in, and be able to roll it up. And after bringing in all of these different factors and going from not knowing at all to knowing and then executing on something within this realm and this industry that they were in, we were able to get 25 million out of it.
Wow.
So we were able to even break the barriers.
What a story. So once the business owner knew what he had, then he could explain it to the buyers.
Absolutely.
Sell it to the buyers. So yeah, what a great story. I love it.
It wasn't just attractive anymore. It was attractive and it had the back end. He was a gentleman at dinner, and
Yeah.
And he had a good personality.
He was good at football and can run the numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
He can run the 40 and he can run the numbers.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny. We see this happen, Rick, even in just a brief conversation. We had went to lunch with a friend. We'll call him Tom. And just barely started. This was one of the earlier conversations we had. And it was funny because he started seeing some real traction in his business. He had maybe 100 different, he had shares or ownership, equity in about 100 different businesses. And he was like, I feel like I'm going in the right direction. Things are looking really good. He was only focused on growth at this point. And we had to ask the question, so what does growth mean to you and why are you so focused on growth? After doing a lot of digging and just connecting and finding out what mattered to him, how he defined freedom, what he wanted out of his business, we've found some fundamental areas that needed to be redefined. He had basically got an offer for his business that was insulting to him. And he had taken that multiple, we'll just say the multiple for the sake of respect out of privacy, but the multiple was around, say, 4x of whatever his value was. And so he was like, this is exactly why I need to grow my business. Because if I'm going to get 4x, what I want to do is I need to grow my business to Y. So I'm going to grow my business to say 10 million and then get my 4x. Mm-hmm. And we said to him, that's really great, but can we introduce a different concept to you? And he said, yeah, sure. Do you understand your range of value in your business is closer to 15? So what's happened is you let somebody place a value on your business of 4x. And so you're living in 4x and you're going to chase down harder work, more labor, more effort, more energy at the value of 4x. Why don't we find out if we can get you closer to 15x and then have a conversation of how much work needs to be done in order to get that? And he was like, mind bomb. What the heck are you talking about? Now we're having an entirely different conversation because he doesn't need to grow from, say, 2 million to 10 million getting 4x. He might be able to grow from, maybe 2 million to 5 million and get 10x out of it, which is an entirely different conversation.
Whole nother ballgame.
And a lot more fun as well. So anyway, that was another fun one, a recent conversation we're having now.
The beauty of that conversation, he had a certain number that he wanted to get to as far as an exit, as far as like what that looks like. And by shifting that and being like, okay, if we can prove that you're closer to best in class, if we can go in and measure what matters, you actually might already be there.
Yeah.
So now that's not even a goal at all.
Wow.
Or break the ceiling on your goal.
And break the ceiling on your goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Hit the high mark, right? You be the high mark in your industry. Right?
Be the Mariah Carey in your industry.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I really appreciate you being on the show. It seems like we could talk about this for hours. We'll talk more later, but how does someone get started with you? If they're interested in this, how do they get started with you? Share your contact information and tell them about next steps.
Absolutely. So for us, really the biggest thing for us is just having a conversation. We want to get to know who we're working with because value matters most. We want to make sure that we're leading with value. Even if we don't work together, can we point you in the right direction? I would say as first and foremost. And if you guys want to get a hold of us, I would just say, check us out on LinkedIn first. I think it's always great to just know who you're even talking to, know where we come from. So you can check out David Gowens or you can check out Garrick Reevs. Gowens is Gowens. And got yours.
And Reeves is Reevs. A little different. So
we love you to just get to know us. Come friend us. First and foremost, we can send you to websites and send you to a bunch of different things. But I think if you can see who we are, where we come from, that conversation we can kick in at a much higher caliber when you start to know where we come from, what we believe in. Find us on social media as well. We'd love to start friending you guys up and just getting to know what freedom looks like for you and how we can make an impact. And if we can be along the journey, great. If we can't, let's point you in the right direction.
That sounds great. So once again, it's Garrick, Garrick, Reevs. There's no ES. It's Reevs.
Correct. Yep. You got it.
And then David? It's easy.
Gowens.
Yeah. Because you want to put an A in, but it's Gowens. Gowens.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it today. And I appreciate everyone for listening in to the podcast, the good, the bad, and the ugly of selling your business. And I think this is mostly good today. I'm going to call it the good thing.
Thank you for attending our podcast. We invite you to join us for future episodes of M&A, Murders and Accusations, the good, the bad, and the ugly of selling your business. You can also visit us at www.bsalesgroup.com or email Rick directly at rick@bsalesgroup.com.